"He's still breathing," muttered Cooper, squinting toward the ridge, hand shielding his eyes from the glare. "Ain't come down in 15 years, but Smoke says he's alive." The townsfolk gathered in a loose circle outside the saloon, boots shifting in the dust. No one dared say his name. Just him or the ridge ghost. From behind the bar, old Mabel chewed the stem of a dry weed. Last time someone went up there, they came back limping and saying they saw 3 crosses and heard someone humming to the dead. A boy pointed toward the horizon. Riders. All heads turned. They didn't gallop. They approached, calm, like shadows cast before the sun died. The Comanche Chief rode tall, his braids silver, his face carved with age. Beside him, 2 daughters, one like ice, the other like wind. Neither smiled, neither blinked. Horses stepped on a main street. The dust rose. Not a sound but hoof and tension. The chief dismounted in front of the blacksmith and looked him dead in the eye. "Where's the white ghost?" he asked, voice dry as bone. "Who lives beyond the river?" Silence. The blacksmith swallowed, nodded toward Hollow Ridge. The chief didn't thank him. He turned. The daughters followed. No wasted breath. Up in the ridge, Gideon Wren watched from the trees, still as stone. Fingers tight around a rusted spyglass. He hadn't moved in hours. The smoke from his chimney curled thin behind him, a mistake he hadn't made in years. Through the glass, he watched the chief's back fade into the scrubland, heading straight toward the cabin. He muttered low, "Hell no." He turned, went inside. Boards creaked. The rifle above the hearth remained untouched, but his hand hovered. On the shelf, a worn photo, his wife, their boy, the son behind them. 3 burned corners. He sat. Outside, footsteps. Then came the soft knock. Not loud, not impatient. Measured. He opened the door halfway, just enough to see the chief. 10 Bears stood with his daughters flanking him, eyes unreadable. He said nothing. Behind them, the land stretched raw and endless. Finally, Gideon rasped, "Didn't think you'd ever come back here." The chief nodded once. "We wouldn't. Not unless the fire followed us." He turned, gesturing at the horizon. Far off, barely visible, dust trails. Riders. 6 maybe. Maybe more. Moving hard, like men with payment promised. The chief added only, "They will not stop." Gideon stared at the shapes for a long time. Then at the daughters. Then back to the rifle above the hearth. He didn't take it down. Not yet. He stepped aside. The chief entered. Behind him, the door creaked shut, and Hollow Ridge fell silent once more. The flames cracked in the stone pit, casting twitching shadows on the cabin walls. The chief sat still as a stump, legs crossed, eyes locked on the blade hanging above Gideon's mantle. A cavalry saber, blackened at the hilt. He hadn't said a word in an hour. Across the fire, Gideon leaned back in his chair, whittling without looking down. Shavings curled at his boots. He didn't speak either. Between them sat Halia, motionless, and Nayeli, her fingers tracing the spine of an old sketchbook left half open on the table. The chief broke the silence. "They hunt with fire." Gideon didn't glance up. "McCall." 10 Bears nodded once. "We fled last night. 1 village burned. For dead." Tracks said 6 men, moving fast. Same brand carved in the tree bark. "Ram skull." 10 Bears' silence was answer enough. Halia looked at Gideon now. "You know this man? I spare him once." "What?" "Because I thought mercy was worth more than lead." He paused. "Turns out, some men ain't built to carry either." Nayeli flipped a page. A drawing of a woman's face stared up at her. Strong jaw, braided hair, laugh lines that survived even the pencil. She whispered, "Was she Comanche?" Gideon's hand paused on the knife. The carving split. He nodded once. 10 Bears stirred then. Looked at the flame, voice like sand dragging over stone. "She was my sister." The wind outside howled against the cracks in the logs. The fire popped. Gideon stood slowly and walked to the window, watching the tree line. "They'll be here by dusk tomorrow. Maybe sooner." Halia rose. "We can keep riding." "You'll die before the mesa," Gideon replied. "The pass is narrow. They'll catch you on open ground." He tapped the glass, where the rocks dropped steep behind his cabin. "But if we pull through the gulch, take the painted trail, We can trap them where they can't run. Halia narrowed her eyes. You still know the land? I never forgot it. Tin Bear stood now, slow but firm. We came to find the man who once walked like shadow, who heard the ground breathe before the horse stepped. We do not need a ghost. We need him. Gideon faced him fully now. The years showed on his face, but not in his eyes. Then let's make ghosts of the ones who ride for us. He reached above the hearth. The rifle came down without a creak. No rust, only dust. He blew it clean. Outside, the wind shifted, and from deep in the canyon, a hawk screamed. Thorns tore at their legs as they pushed through the scrub. Dry branches cracked underfoot. The canyon opened ahead, narrow, sunless, cruel. Gideon dropped to one knee, running his fingers over the dry soil. He scraped a line, then glanced up the bluff. This is where we break him, he said. Behind him, Halia studied the slope, already unstringing her bow. Arrows here, she said, pointing to a cluster of boulders above. 2 volleys before they crossed the choke. Gideon nodded. I'll be below. Draw him in. Nayeli crouched by the path, laying strands of sinew soaked in oil. Gideon watched her work. You learned that from your mother? She learned it from yours, she answered, not looking up. The silence that followed felt like respect. By dusk, the trail was ready. Caltrops buried beneath loose sand. Tripwires tied to stones. High ground staked for the daughters. The kind of killing ground only a man with ghosts could know how to build. Gideon stood at the narrowest bend of the gulch, staring into the orange glow horizon. He lit a match. The smoke curled around his face like memory. He spoke low. I brought my boy here once. He laughed, trying to chase a lizard through that ravine. Halia, above him, knocked an arrow. You think they'll come through this exact spot? He turned, eyes hollow. They always take the path of least resistance. That's what McCall does. Always walks downhill until someone digs a grave at the bottom. They camped beneath the rocks that night. No fire, just wind and stone. Gideon sat apart, cleaning his rifle by feel. He didn't hum, didn't pray. Just worked like his hands remembered more than his mind wanted to. Nayeli slipped beside him, holding the sketchbook. She pointed to a page. This one, the tree. That's here, isn't it? He glanced. Yeah, that's the one that didn't burn. She studied the page, then the canyon. You never left because you were hiding. Gideon didn't answer. You stayed because you were waiting. He looked at her now, eyes sharp, voice low. I stayed because I wanted to forget. But the land doesn't let you. It remembers everything. Just like a Comanche. Above them, a hawk circled. Far off, hoofbeats. Faint, but steady. They were coming. He stood, slinging the rifle. Daughters of fire, he said softly, looking to the ridge. Let's give them a welcome that makes the stones talk. The first trap snapped a horse's leg in half. The beast screamed, toppled, crushed its rider beneath bone and saddle. The others froze, rifles drawn, eyes sweeping the rocks. Ambush, someone shouted. Too late. 2 arrows sliced down from above. One struck a man clean through the neck. The other lodged in a shoulder. Blood hit the dust like rain on iron. McCall dismounted slow, calm, black coat brushing his spurs. He looked around the canyon, lips curling. Gideon, he called, voice echoing off stone. You never did like to bleed with company. From the shadows ahead, Gideon stepped out. Dust coated his coat, rifle steady in his hands. The hawk screamed above. McCall's grin widened. Last I saw you, you were screaming inside a burning house. Gideon didn't flinch. And last I saw you, you were begging. Looks like neither of us died like we should have. Gunfire cracked from the ridge. Another rider tumbled, Halia already knocking her next arrow. Nayeli darted between boulders, lighting the soaked twine. Flames raced up the canyon wall. The bounty men scattered. Gideon moved like thunder, shot dropping one man mid-turn. The next tried to flee, caught the tripwire, fell into a pit of thorns, screaming. McCall fired, missed. Fired again, clipped Gideon's shoulder. Blood darkened the fabric. Gideon didn't slow. He walked forward, rifle low, eyes locked. McCall reloaded, hands shaking now. You're just an old man, he hissed. No, Gideon said, raising the rifle. I'm the man you should have killed when you had the chance. One shot. straight through the gut. McCall dropped, clutching himself, gasping like a fish on dry land. Gideon stood over him. "Mercy," McCall croaked. "Spare me." Like before. Gideon stared down. The wind howled. "No!" The second shot ended it. Silence fell. Just fire crackling, the hawk circling, the canyon holding its breath. By morning, the smoke was gone. 10 bears stood at the canyon's mouth, drawing ash circles in the dirt. Halia buried the dead. Niley packed their things. Gideon sat against a rock, arm wrapped in cloth, eyes watching the horizon. He didn't speak until the chief approached. 10 bears knelt beside him. "You brought balance." Gideon shook his head. "No, I just finished what should have never started." The chief stood, offered his hand. Gideon took it. "Brother again," 10 bears said. They rode out before the sun hit high. Gideon didn't follow. He walked down the canyon alone, boots scuffing ash and blood. That afternoon, Hollow Ridge watched its ghost ride down the path toward town. When he stepped into the saloon and ordered coffee, no one spoke. He sat at the window, watching the road. And for the first time in 15 years, he smiled.